Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Ismail Salah. Inshallah, in this episode, I will explain and I will talk about a new criticism, the definition of it, and key figures and time of it, and the new criticism generally. The definition of a new criticism is a formalist movement of literary theory that dominated American literary criticism in the mid 20th century, roughly 1940s, 1960s. The new criticism it shifted the focus of literary analysis away from the author, readers, and historical context and placed it squarely in the text itself. They don't look behind the text or background of the authors or the feeling of the writer of the readers, but they look and focus on the text and the text itself. The co-philosophy depicts as an object. New critics treated a poem or novel as an autonomous, self-contained object, independent. They believe that a work of literature does not need external information to be understood. They believe that a work of literature does not need external information to be understood, but they need to the internal information and the text within the page or within the novel or the poem or any writing. To emphasize this, they coin two famous terms what that mean a new criticism a new criticism is treated a poem or novel as autonomous, self-contained object, as independent. So they coined two famous terms: the intentional fallacy by W.K. Umsat and Monor Verdisley, the mistaken belief that the author's intention or biography determines the meaning of the text. So, new critics argued that the author's intention or biography determines the meaning of the text. So they don't need to determine the meaning of the text by the intention and biography of the authors, but they determines the meaning of the text by the text itself. This is the intentional fallacy, and don't look for the author's intention or the author's biography, but they look on the text and the text itself and doesn't or don't look to the effective fallacy too. Also, sad and purposely, the mistaken belief that the reader's emotional response determines the quality or meaning of the text. So, the feelings of the readers and the emotion of the readers determines the quality and the meaning of the text. So, they don't need to determine the meaning of the text, and maybe we have many maybe the meaning when we need to analyze the text according to the intention of the author of the intention and emotion of the readers. Maybe we have many reason and many meaning of the text. So why that? So they look on the text and the text itself. The method, close reading. To avoid the intentional and effective fallacies, new critics developed the technique of close reading. When doing a close reading, a critic looks for. So, how we can avoid the intentional and effective fallacies? New critics developed the technique of close reading. By close reading, we avoid the intentional and effective fallacies. What does it mean on close reading? And when doing a close reading, a critical a critic looks for the critics looks for paradox, irony, ambiguity, tension, all the as content. Paradox, we have two contradictory meaning, but reveal a deeper truth in the text. Uh, Irony, a gap between what is said and what is meant. When we say something and we intend something else, this is irony. Ambiguity, words or phrases that have multiple meaning, which enrich the text. What behind this word? This is ambiguity, and this is enrich the text, making beauty to the text. Key figures: John Crow Ransom. He wrote the seminal essay Criticism in 1937, which formally proposed that criticism should be an academic discipline and named the movement. He argued that literary criticism should be scientific and objective. So, literary criticism, he argued that literary criticism should be scientific and objective. William Key, State and Monarch Disney, who formalized intentional and effective fallacies. Yeah. T.S. Eliot, although primarily a poet, his essays on literary tradition and impersonality, the poet is not an expression of the poet's personality. He influenced the new criticism's foundation. This is T.S. I. A. Richards, an earlier British critic whose practical experiments in reading, having the students interpret poems without knowing the author, laid the groundwork for close reading. What a new critics rejected. What a new critics rejected. The new critics rejected the biography criticism. They reject the biography of the author. They reject the history of the author of or the historical context, and they reject the psychological meaning or feeling, and they reject moralistic criticism. Strengths and success. It professionalized English studies, giving literary criticism a rigorous scientific methodology that could be taught and tested in universities. Yes. It democratized literature because the text is autonomous and the student with the text in hand has just as much authority as the professor who knows the author's biography. It highlighted the incredible artistry and craftsmanship involved in writing poetry, elevating the status of folk and their studies. Weakness and criticism. By the 1970s, the new criticism fell out of favor for several reasons. It is ahistorical. By ignoring history, politics, and culture, new criticism treats Russia as if it exists in a vacuum. Critics, especially Marxists, and the new historians, pointed and literature is all the product of its time. It ignores the reader. Readers, phones, theorists argue that a text has no meaning until someone reads it. The reader experience is not a fallacy but the entire point. They don't look on the history, politics, or culture, and they reject and dismiss the reader's response or feelings. The reader ignores identity. They reject and ignore and dismiss the identity, feminist, Marxist, and post-colonial critics argued that ignoring the author's race, gender, and class was actually a political act that preserved the state favors Bouverie. His reading works beautifully for short, dense poems, like those by John Donne or T.S. Eliot. It is much harder to apply effectively to a 500-page novel. This is what I'm prepared for a new criticism. Thank you for listening.